We now have three leaders joining us to share insights on hybrid learning in urban India in the session titled Pivotal Pioneers of Urban India. To begin this space, I welcome Bani Paintal Dhawan, the head of Google for Education in India. Bani has been with Google for over 11 years, and her focus is to enable a large ecosystem to impact learning outcomes through Google's products and platforms specifically designed for students and educators. Welcome, Bani. We're very excited to have you here today. Over to you.
Thank you, Anu. Pleasure to be here, and a very warm good evening, namaste to all of you. I know we have actually been part of inspirED before as well, and I'm so very thankful to Teach for India to for having me back again. It's always very delightful to not only be part of conferences that you do, but also the great impact that you're making in the education community. So thanks again for that. So from my perspective, I think, it's been a very interesting year for education. We've all learned, we've all grown, we've all faced difficulties and challenges, and we have come out stronger of it. Being the optimist that I am, my focus today would be on how do we take all of these positives in India and what we have learned during COVID, how digital adoption in India has increased tremendously, but also there has been some growing inequality. How do we bridge that? There are opportunities, and at the same time, there are challenges. Those would be really, really important for us to consider as a group. I would start by, Google's mission in education and what we want to do. Helping every student get access to learning opportunities is what really drives the Google for Education team. And what we mean by that is, with digital becoming front and center, or technology becoming front and center, it is very, very important as we move out of just being online to a more blended or a hybrid learning environment, to understand what it is that we will do in terms of technology, and how do we create an environment that can support each school system, each student, and each teacher. I would emphasize that for Google for Education, our core user is the student. We care deeply about learning impact for that user. And we also believe that teachers are the most important, and in the ecosystem, and they are directors of the learning for this core user called student. But what we have seen during COVID is that parents, school managements, have become important as stakeholders as well, not only about their growing awareness in terms of digital and what is working for them and the choices they want, but just, fundamental difference in where we were pre-COVID to now is the acceptance of digital. Is the acceptance that we have all not only continued to learn because of technology and digital education, but also that there are benefits in terms of learning outcomes, there are benefits in terms of productivity, and there is definitely benefit in terms of how future skills are developed in our students. Because more so now than ever before, it is evident that we will all live and work in a digital environment, and digital skills are going to be really important for all Indian students. Now, keeping that in mind, what we really hope to achieve is, as this digital, becomes much more prevalent in the Indian school system, we want to be able to give access to information so that this information is not only used to transform both the individual and their communities, but more importantly, we're able to support a learning journey from a school to a learning journey at work, and of course, learning for life. So the entire Google for Education suite, or if you look broadly at Google overall, our intent would be to help everyone in the world learn anything in the world. So what does that mean for schools, higher education institutions, etc.? We want to provide every student and teacher a more personalized learning environment. We've already seen that during COVID, that it supports different learning needs. We also want to be able to design and deliver differentiated and engaging learning experience. And how we do that is through our platform called Google Workspace for Education. And we also are working very hard, and this happened organically when teachers got together and created digital content. But Google on our side as well, we're working very hard to enhance and elevate class content with a host of education resources. I would highlight that one of the biggest or uh, most important takeaway that we have had as Google for Education during the last couple of months or years has been that language learning is very, very important. Focusing on each student's native language, the kind of experience that they have, their context or their school system is super important. And technology is an enabler. So technology needs to fit in to that environment, not to be standing alone or not to be an element where we say that technology can solve any of these problems. And the second critical pillar is that we have to do a lot of change management or transformative work with teachers to be able to get acceptance and adoption for these digital technologies in classroom. So that's the other focus that that Google focuses on, and we continue to do so. How are we doing this? Worldwide, we have over 180 million users using Google Workspace for Education and over 150 million using Google Classroom. Google Classroom has become the default destination as a learning management system for a lot of school systems in India as well. And what we are doing increasingly is to innovate within to provide more local language interface and to be able to support Indic languages. And finally, we also believe that the important piece of the puzzle that will need to be solved is access devices. Just as important the platform is to host this amazing content, it to be language specific and curriculum specific, access, whether it's in the form of what we have as Chromebooks, which are shareable devices, or in terms of tablet form factor is very important. We believe as Google that the idea should be for India to move away from just being consumption devices to more a creation-led environment where project work is happening, where teachers are sharing information in the formats like video formats or assignments or collaborative projects so that each of these learners contribute and also take away and learn. And that's possible if we are able to solve 4 important pillars, as we call it. One is access, which is providing content and devices to students. Second is content, where we not only have specific language content, but also curriculum map content that is interactive, that is personalized, that is relevant in the context of the student and the teacher. And the third pillar is that we build teacher capacity. And this has to be done at scale. We currently have a partnership with CBSE where we are committed to train 1 million teachers in India. And we have really strong adoption from this program. And we are hoping that with Teach for India as well, we're able to grow that ecosystem. We also believe that learning happens where life happens, whether it's at home, in a class, or anywhere in between. So that's why it even becomes more important that we are able to use technology in whichever situation we are in or whichever format we are in. I think that's one thing we all have taken away as well. I'm going to do a time check, Anu. Am I on time? And if you could just let me know how much more time I have.
Hi, yeah, I'll message you in a bit.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the idea would be then that as we see this fundamental shift in learning and how students learn, how teachers have adapted to this new learning environment. What was really interesting to us during COVID was that we did a research report with BCG that said that the positive impact on digital tools on teaching and learning is tremendous. And we heard that up to 60% of teachers reported that Google for Education technologies were creative and innovative. And what do we mean by that? One of the most interesting points that we hear very often in the student community as also the school communities is that, how is AI used to actually enable more interactive or real learning experience? For Google, this is a fundamental challenge we would like to solve. And what we have done as a start is we've launched Read Along, which is an AI-based assistant called, which has an AI-based assistant called Rhea that helps primary grade students learn, languages. And we've been able to work with various state governments as also with central government to enable that experience. So there's an AI built that actually, that Dia actually encourages a child to not only read, but also has a reward system that encourages a child to take more complicated words, will be able to read back to the child. And that experience is very, very important, especially in certain demographics where we have first-time learners. And the second innovation that we have done, which we're very, very excited about, is we have launched a beta on Practice Set on Google Classroom, where we are able to provide an assistive learning experience both at the student side as well as the teacher side. And now how that works is that you're able to convert an assignment in a format that is easy to collaborate. And when a student works on that assignment or is part of their homework, we actually suggest YouTube videos that are relevant to the topic. And we also support them in like other sources of learning that they will may be able to be able to utilize when they are actually answering that assignment and submitting that assignment. On the teacher side, why this system of practice sets would really help is because the teachers are then not only relying on an environment over 1:many, but the student is supported and a teacher can actually leave comments and also resources on top of what has been already shared. And they are able to then get learning analytics out of how the child learns. What can they do more? What is the kind of format that the student really is interested in for a particular concept? So again, these are great innovations that are happening within our platform, and we know that it is making a difference to the teaching and learning environment in Indian public or government school systems. And also, one of the interesting things that we hear very often is now that we are back at school or in our transition phase, how much of these tools will be utilized. And I would say that we've had very, very disruptive years, and disruption leads to innovation. So if you ask me, if we do not use this opportunity where we've all had a very disruptive school learning experience and come out stronger by adapting and continuing to do some of the best practices, we would fundamentally lose out on not only the progress we made, but also what is in store in the future. So I would highly recommend that each school system picks the kind of learning experience that they would want using technology and continue to use that as schools reopen. We have several examples in terms of our reference schools, and we also encourage you to find a reference school, Google reference schools in your ecosystem and see how you could actually work with them. I would say that, when we are thinking of the national education policy, we talk about student-centered learning, enriched feedback, personalized attention. Technology is enabling a teacher to do that while being super productive herself or himself as well. We also, highly recommend that digital has evolved from being just a stopgap arrangement to a more long-term strategy. We know that, in our BCG impact assessment, we found that 82% of educators predict that combining technology with traditional teaching will be the most likely trend over the next 3 to 5 years. This is very, very important. As we think through, like I said, transitioning back into school, how you incorporate technologies would be really, really important. We want to be able to support every leader, every educator, every student, and every parent, to evolve learning to be more transformative and to be more personalized. And we are happy that all of our products support that. So with that, I'm going to open the house for questions, Anu, or hand it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bani, for sharing these profound learnings with us. Something that stood out to me is the vision of helping anyone in the world to learn anything in the world and the role technology will play towards that. We won't have any questions as of now, so we can move to the next speaker. I welcome Sanjay Dalmia, CEO and founder of Open Links Foundation, to continue the discussion on education in urban India. Open Links Foundation empowers teachers with high quality lesson plans, activities, and resources aligned to curriculum through an open platform. Welcome, Sanjay. Over to you.
Thank you, Anu, and thank you, Bani. It was a pleasure listening to all the thoughts. So, I had a very interesting question which came to me from one of the teachers, and I was talking about blended learning as the way forward. And the teacher asked me, "Sir, are you sure blended learning is the way forward?" And I was a bit taken aback, and I said, "Why do you have that question?" And this is from a big school in south of India, big prestigious school, where technology was not so much of a problem. So she said, "Sir, everyone is so happy to come back to school. The children are excited, the parents are excited, the teachers are excited, the school principals are excited. So why do you think that, blended learning is the way forward?" So that was a good question. The question was, are we going to return to the old normal? We had a new normal during COVID where things were very different. And what is the way forward? And we had an interesting discussion following that conversation. And what I will do is I will share with you my experiences, our product journey, to highlight what I think is the way forward on blended learning. So I will share my screen. I will use my presentation to talk about our work. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, so the question is blended learning, is it a way forward? We are Open Links Foundation. We started our work in 2016. We are supported by DAV Chennai, IIM Ahmedabad alumni. We focus on making education fun and relevant, and in particularly 21st century education that we are all excited about. What is 21st century education? The NEP talks multiple times that it is multidisciplinary and holistic. So that means, it is arts integrated, story integrated, value integrated education. And that means that teachers need to be better prepared with good activities, good stories, good worksheets, good videos, real life applications, backed with good pedagogy, new methods of assessment, formative assessment, summative assessments, etc. Lots and lots of requirements on what teachers should be prepared with as they go into the classroom. But at the same time, having worked in this sector for 6 years now, I understand that teachers are really busy in various ways. In government schools, they are busy with different kind of work, but they are really busy. And in private schools, they are busy with, again, many different types of work. And class preparation normally takes the back seat. So what is it that we are doing? We are doing three things. We are providing teacher support, teacher engagement, and teacher motivation. So these are the three things that we are doing. What does teacher support mean? We provide lesson plans, unit plans aligned to curriculum, clear learning outcomes, aligned with NEP 2020, with activities, with worksheets, with case studies, stories, so that teachers, when they go into the classroom, they have a fair amount of content without having to search the internet for content. And they are prepared. And of course, they must customize all this content as they go into their class. We have over 10,000 lesson plans for CBSE and 8 other state boards. And we have now this in 3 vernacular mediums, English and 2 other vernacular mediums, Hindi and Marathi. So this is the first thing that we do. I'll quickly give you a snapshot of what this teacher engagement and how do we engage teachers. Teachers can share their TLMs, their experience, their teacher stories, their club activities, They can connect with other amazing teachers. So, this is where teachers can, for example, they can see this connect button here. And if I want to connect with Vinoba, I can, just like LinkedIn, I can go and see the profile of Vinoba. I can see the work, the posts that have been done by Vinoba. I can see the other activities of Vinoba, and I can connect with Vinoba. I can see the work that they are doing, and I can then like very easily, because it is coming in front of me, so I can easily like it. I have these various clubs where I can put up my content, the projects which children are doing in my class. So that is teacher engagement, and that is the second part, which is very important to engage the teachers. Here, the motivation for the teacher, one is the simple likes that come from fellow teachers and the teachers whom I'm connected with. This small social recognition is very important, because once I put something, I am looking for some recognition from my peers, from maybe students, to recognize my work. And that becomes an important motivation for the teacher. The other thing is, as a teacher also, as I work on the platform and as I contribute, my own portfolio gets built up. So I can see, what are my posts. All my posts can also be seen by others. As a mentor teacher, how I have supported my students, thank you notes that I have received from the community. So these are the portfolios that gets built up as I work on the platform. There are other motivations like post of the month, post of the year, 21st century educator, and there are these are at a school level, at a cluster level, at a block level, at a district level, to recognize the work that is being done by the teachers. So why is it important? It is important because it is not sufficient to give content to the teachers. We need to engage the teachers. It's a change in habit that we are seeking at scale. How do we motivate the teachers to use the platform, to use the content and change their methods of teaching towards a more 21st century education? So that is what we are doing to engage the teachers. This is one case study where we are working with Pune Zilla Parishad schools, almost 3,700 schools, and creating a two-way communication between the diet, the education department, and the schools. So the key objectives are listening to the teachers, teacher training, calendar and events, weekly plans. So various ways in which the communication happens apart from support. We are also working with Bharti Foundation, where they have their own schools in 5 states. Mostly village schools. They also work with about 700 government schools in 11 states. So again, various ways in which we engage the teachers, engage the students, and work with the system to create the adoption. So, 3 things which are important, and above all, one of the things which we heard was that most of the platforms are talking to the teachers. So we are giving content, we are talking to the teachers, but we are not, giving them an opportunity to talk and present what they are doing or create a conversation. So the things that we are doing are teacher engagement, teacher motivation, teacher support. We work with NGOs, partners, government, and also with schools. So that's what we are doing, and we would love to, have your thoughts on the chat box, and love to work with more schools and partners. So if you're interested, do get in touch with us at contact@techlinks.com. Thank you, Anu. I know the time is up, and over to you.
Thank you, Sanjay, for sharing all your wonderful experiences. I agree with you that along with content and curriculum, mindsets also need to be nurtured. And it is interesting to see how Open Links is trying to engage and motivate teachers. Up next, we have Rhea Handa, Project Manager at Central Square Foundation. At CSF, Rhea drives research and evidence generation agenda for EdTech for foundational learning. Welcome, Rhea. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Anu, and thanks so much to the TFI and Filky team for having me. I'm really excited to be here to contribute to the discussion. I'm so glad Bani and Sanjay talked a lot about teachers and how to engage teachers, because I'm going to move a little bit away from that. Today, I want to talk a little bit about, innovation in EdTech that can catalyze communities, parents, and learners as agents of change. I'll start by setting some context on why EdTech and the opportunity in urban India. I'll move a little bit to talk a little bit about what CSF is and what CSF's EdTech team does. And then I'll talk a little bit about the promising innovations in India and some of the really cool partners we've been working with over the last year and how they've leveraged some of the change agents that I've just mentioned. So very quickly diving into EdTech, right? What we've seen is that EdTech has huge potential to address key gaps in the education system. So for example, in a multi-grade, multi-level classroom where there's a large diversity in learning levels, you have use cases such as personalized adaptive learning with a lot of evidence behind them to help remediate children to the right level. Similarly, at home, where parental education levels and awareness is low around engaging with their child's education, you can have parent-focused tools that build parents' capacity to meaningfully engage in their child's learning. So with this sort of evidence-led mindset, we also looked at the opportunity. And what we see in India is that there is great opportunity for EdTech at home, right? We have smartphone penetration like never before. We are set to have over 1 billion smartphone users by 2024. And a large chunk of that is urban penetration. So the opportunity in urban India is quite big. But I think, there are still some key challenges that remain. So one, we have a lack of solutions for the K-12 space that are available in vernacular languages. There's limited exposure amongst parents, students, and teachers on the potential for technology for learning, though that has changed a lot since COVID. There's also limited awareness and capacity for governments to implement EdTech effectively and hence take EdTech to scale. And finally, despite some of the evidence that I just talked about globally, there is a lack of evidence of what can work in the Indian context and how, which is something that I work on quite strongly at CSF. So CSF's work in EdTech is geared towards addressing some of these key challenges. So, one, we work with high quality EdTech solutions to take their solutions to the low income sector in partnership with us. We develop iterative evidence. So we work with some of our partners to generate a body of evidence on EdTech in India, on how EdTech can work, what EdTech can work, and whether it can work at scale. Third, we help states adopt EdTech. So we increase salience for EdTech uptake and help provide support to government EdTech implementation. Finally, through all of this work, we also create public goods for the larger ecosystem to have evidence on EdTech, to share what works, and then to build playbooks and toolkits for EdTech to scale. So in this context, I'll quickly jump to the 3 levers that I want to talk about today. So, Bani and Sanjay, like I said, talked about teachers, but really I think the 3 key agents that we've identified through our work over the last few years is 1, communities, engaging communities to create support systems for parents and families and students. Second is parents. So engaging parents is almost a second teachers, a role that they've had to assume over the last years to improve engagement and learning. And finally, look at learners, engaging learners in play-based interactive experiences to help improve engagement and retention and learning over time. So I'll call out some of the really interesting partners we've been working in this space. First up, we have Sarthi, which leverages communities and brings them together towards a shared goal of learning for children. So in addition to some of the high quality content that they share through daily worksheets, they have a really strong involvement of the community in the form of relationship managers. And these relationship managers really provide a lot of motivational and pedagogical support to parents in order to help them engage more meaningfully. They also use technology to create feedback loops, to disseminate these worksheets, and to track key metrics on student learning outcomes. And what this really achieved towards the end is, parents are supporting their children at home and engaging with their child's learning. B, children are practicing at their own pace and at their own level. Finally, that almost leads to the long-term outcome of confidence in parents, capacity of parents to have a positive attitude towards education in the household. And then daily practice through these incremental worksheets allows students to gain mastery over concepts. So I really like the way, Sarthi has brought communities together, and I've seen some of the spillover effects that Sarthi has been able to have in the form of, livelihoods, in terms of financial empowerment, in terms of empowering a lot of the women in the community. So we've, had, when I visited the field a couple of weeks ago, we did see, mothers come and say that I could never even talk to someone, and now I'm able to do that. So I really, it's really interesting to see how they've brought that community together over technology to be able to enable their children to learn. And fun fact, Sarthi was actually started by a TFI alumni called Ankit Arora. So it's one of my favorite sort of community-based solutions. Moving on to parents. So we have Rocket Learning, which leverages parents by building their capacity to be meaningfully and actively involved in their child's learning. What they do is essentially you leverage parent-teacher communities. So they build parent-teacher communities where they share really high-quality activity-based learning content. They use sort of social influence to get parents to engage with their children, but also to engage in these communities. And then using technology, they are able to provide instant feedback to parents on how they are doing and how their children are doing. What this eventually leads to is, one, parents have the aspiration and motivation to engage with their children at home, and they're conducting regular learning activities and engaging with their child, which has evidence to show long-term learning outcome improvement. Finally, in the long term, what this means is that there is a lot of family support for education, and that is what leads to learning outcomes. There's long-term change in parental knowledge, attitudes, and practices towards education. And finally, there are spillover effects on learning and parents' participation in school. So with this sort of, virtual communities, what Rocket Learning has done is really started working with a lot of municipal corporations to build some of these communities and then share a lot of this activity-based content to help students learn. Finally, we have Chimple. And Chimple, I think, is a special one for me. I work very closely with them. Chimple puts the learner at the center of the learning process and leverages sort of the playfulness of children to help them learn in a really fun and interactive way. So they almost have a two-pillar approach. One, they engage the child in a game-based learning experience. So they have a set of games that are aligned to curriculum to help the child actually learn. And two, they also involve learning agents very meaningfully, which sort of brings together my whole presentation in some ways, in which you can leverage parents, you can leverage teachers to be able to help the child learn. So they have insight into how the child is learning, how the child is performing on these games. And I also able to assign specific activities for the child to do. Throughout all of this, they create a monitoring and feedback loop to capture the user's journey and enable continuous iteration on their solution. So they are able to build new product and programmatic features to be able to improve learning outcomes over time. I think, the three solutions that I talked about, I think one of the most interesting things about them is just the way they are able to generate engagement in some ways, right? You see a lot of high response rates, you see a lot of high engagement from children, and, the spillover effects on the community, on the parents, on the learner, but also the teacher and the wider school community is honestly catalytic. And I've had such a great time working with these organizations. I'm so happy to highlight their work today. I think I'm at time, so I'll pause here. Thanks again to everybody.
Thank you so much, Rhea, for sharing about Sarthi, Rocket Learning, and Chimple. We have posted all these links in our chat, so I request users to go and check all of these various sites later. And thank you once again, Bani and Sanjay, for joining us and sharing your terrific stories as well.